Hi students, Tim here from Lessons on the Web once again, and in today's video I'm going to show you all about how to read music, so let's get right on into it. Okay, so as I said in the intro, today is all about reading music, so before we do that, let me point out some things you need to know about what's right in front of us here. So it should look familiar. Most music sheets that you read should look pretty similar to this, where you have what's called a staff, which is really this whole thing, right? This whole thing is really the staff, but the staff specifically is really, that's actually what's called the grand staff, but there's actually two staves, or two staves as you could say. There's one here and one here. The top one has this symbol around it, or in front of it, and that's called the treble clef. That implies, for the most part at least, that you are playing up on the high end of the piano with your right hand. And at the bottom one, this one right here, this is the bass clef. You're going to be playing that mostly with your left hand, and you're talking about notes from middle C down on the low end of the piano. So once again, treble is high notes with your right hand. Bass clef, for the most part, is going to be low notes with your left hand, just so you're aware of that. And that the collection of lines, there's, let's see here, let me erase these really quick. So there's a collection of lines and spaces. So here's a line, right? Here's a line. 3, 4, there's 5 lines total, right? And a note can fall on any of those lines. It can also fall in between the lines, right? So you can also have what's called the spaces. So there's lines and spaces for both clefs. There's lines and spaces for the treble clef and lines and spaces for the bass clef. 5 lines and 4 spaces in between those lines, and depending on which line or space a note falls under, tells you what note to play and where on the piano to play that note, but we'll get to that in just a minute. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the top staff, which is with the treble clef, right? So what hand plays with the treble clef? The left hand? No, it's going to be the right hand, right, as I had mentioned before. And remember that as the word treble implies, like if you have a radio and you turn the treble all the way up, then it's going to get higher. You'll hear more of the higher notes, right? So same kind of thing here. Treble clef, higher notes up on the keyboard. Okay, so here we go. So as I mentioned, depending on which line or space the note falls under, tells you what note to play and where on the piano to play that note. So here we go. So the key to being able to read music is memorizing your lines and your spaces for each clef. So here we go. I'm going to draw a note on each of the lines, and we'll see how that goes here in a second. Click out of it there. By the way, if you have any questions about what program I'm using to do this, it's called StaffPad. And as you can see, right, that you now have a note on each of the lines. If it goes on a space, you know it's a space because there's no line going directly through the note. It's either top or below the note. But here, you know it's on a line because it goes straight through the note, right? And the lines of the treble clef are as follows. It's E, G, B, D, and F. So E, G, B, D, and F. Now, a lot of times we come up with a saying that makes it a lot easier to remember, like with each of the first letters of the saying corresponding to one of these letters. So you can have like every good boy deserves fries, right? So E for every, G for good, B for boy, D for deserves, and F for fries. But just remember that no matter what saying or mnemonic device that you come up with to memorize these, that you count from the bottom line to the top line. If you start from the top line to the bottom line, you'll actually have them in reverse and you won't hit any of your notes right. So the number one thing to get out of this lesson is that you want to be counting these from the bottom to the top. So E, G, B, D, and F are the lines of the treble clef. Let me show you that last line there. It's taken up by my picture. Sorry about that. Let me move this over here. So there's the top line F. So now we're going to do the spaces. So we have a note here on the first space, second space, third space, and hey, only 4 spaces can fit in between those 5 lines. And the spaces of the treble clef are as follows. It's F, A, C, and E. Hey, that spells a word, right? Face. So you really don't need something to memorize this one because it spells a word that we're all fairly familiar with, at least, you know, if you're in an English speaking country. The word face, F-A-C-E. Now the key to this is, where should you start counting from? So say you know in your head, all right, spaces is the treble clef. It's going to be face, F-A-C-E. But do I start from the top and go down like the top space is F? No, right? You want to start from the bottom space down here and then go up from there. So F-A-C-E. From the bottom to the top is the main thing you should get out of this lesson. So now let's talk about the bass clef. Okay, everybody, now we're going to talk about the bass clef. As you notice, there's 5 lines in the bass clef as well. Let me write them in for us, or notes on the lines, rather. So you have 3, here's line 4, and then line 5. There we go. We have 5 lines once again. Remember, we're going from which line? The bottom to the top. Remember, bottom to top, and I think we'll be in good shape. This time, the letters are G, B, D, F, and A. Remember, we're going from which line? The bottom one to the top one. Now, you can come with a saying or mnemonic device to remember this one as well. A lot of people use like great big dogs fight animals, or just really anything, so long as it begins with those letters and you can memorize it really well. I would stick with that. Just remember to start from the bottom line to the top line. Same thing with the spaces, which we'll talk about here right now. Okay, time for the spaces of the bass clef. Okay, this time we have 4 spaces once again, like we did with the other clef. This time the letters are A, C, E, and G, or the saying, all cows eat grass, or anything, that matches that. And remember that when you're coming up with the solution for these, you want to go from which space? The bottom. Remember, always from the bottom. You start at the bottom and you work your way to the top. Kind of like in business, or kind of like almost in anything, right? Makes sense. Okay, so now we're going to practice reading some notes. So what I really recommend you do first is rewatch the first part of this lesson, first few minutes where I talk about the lines and the spaces for each clef, just to kind of go over those in your mind. But really quick, the lines of the treble clef are E, G, B, D, and F. And the spaces spell a certain word. It spells face, right? F-A-C or E. So let me draw a note. We're just doing the treble clef right now. And hey, there's a note, and that is on the top space. So what letter must it be? Well, it must be, since the bottom space is F, the next one's A, C, and oh hey, that note must be E right there. And specifically on the piano keyboard, this E is kind of far up there. I'm going to show you where they fall on the piano keyboard in a minute here. Okay, so let's try another one. Let's see, I move it down to this second line from the bottom. Which one will that be? Well, remember, the lines of the treble clef are what? Pause the video and think about it for a minute. The lines of the treble clef are E, G, B, D, and F. And this was the second line, so it must be G, right? E, G, B, D, and F. So it must be G. And this G is right here. One thing I want to mention before I really get into the nitty-gritty of where these fall on the piano is that a lot of the notes for treble clef are from here, middle C, right in front of me, all the way up, to about, actually the top line of that clef actually is that F. So it's really from, it's really from this E to this F right here, from the bottom line's right here, and the top line is all the way up there. Okay, let's try another one. What about that one? Well, that's the third space up. So pause the video and think about it for a minute. Rewatch the first part of the video again if you need to. That third space has to be, it spells a word. Remember, it spells face. So what's the third letter in face? That's going to be C, right? So that must be a C right there. And I'll give you that C is a little bit far up. It is right there on the piano. What about this note? This note is on the bottom line, so think about it for a second if you need to. This is going to be E on the piano, and like I said, the bottom line is right here on the piano, all the way up through the top space. Okay, let me point something out really quick. So if I drag this down, just 2 more. There we go, a little touch sensitive there. And hey, that's weird, huh? It doesn't fit on the staff. And actually, it starts adding lines. Notice that? How when I drag it way down there, it adds lines. Those are called ledger lines. And really what they're for is for notes, because the range for the staff is only from there to there. So what happens if you have notes like way up here or notes way down here? Well, you need what's called ledger lines to basically extend the staff and be able to tell where you are. The one ledger line I want you to know about in this lesson is this one right here. See how it's on like the first ledger line by itself? That note is middle C right there. And every note on the clef is above that this way up to here. So you have middle C down here. And then one thing I also want to point out is if you move one up on the staff, let's do that. So we're going from here. We've moved up to the next space. That's actually the space before the staff even starts. But if you move one up on the staff, you move one up on the keyboard as well. So let's move up one more. Well, that's going to go from D to E, right? I moved one up on the staff. I'm going to move one up on the keyboard. What if I move up 2 on the staff? Well, I'm going to move up 2 on the keyboard as well. So that's how it works. It does correlate to the keyboard in terms of how the distance of how far the notes are moving. Okay, now we're going to practice a little bit with the bass clef. We're going to do a couple of lines first. So what if I drew a line or drew a note on this line right here at the top? Well, remember the saying. Go back to the earlier parts of the video if you need, but remember the saying for lines of the bass clef are good, boys, deserve, fries, always are G, B, D, F, A. We're counting from the bottom line to the top, so it's going to be the last in that saying. And it's going to be A for always, or whatever saying you happen to come up with. So that's an A, and I'll give you a hint that that A on the keyboard is right there, right below what we call middle C. Because remember, a lot of the bass clef notes, not all of them, but most of them are from middle C down that way. The bottom line of the bass clef, by the way, down here, this G, is right here on the piano. Okay, what if I move it here? It's now on a space, correct? And it is on the third space up from the bottom. Remember, the spaces of the bass clef are all cows, or A, C. What's the next letter? It's going to be E, right? So because it's all cows eat grass, and E, eat, starts with E. So there you go. And we're counting from the bottom to the top once again. And this E, by the way, is right here. It's the first E below middle C. Now let me show you something. Hey, I moved it above the staff. What is that thing called, right? It goes up above the staff, and then all of a sudden they start adding something lines. What was it called? I said it earlier in the lesson. Leave it in the comments if you have it. They're called ledger lines. And ledger lines, like I said, are used to extend the staff. Once again, going way up and way down below the staff, you add more and more ledger lines. But I want you to be familiar with this ledger line in particular, because this ledger line that's above the bass clef is middle C. So you may be saying, well, wait a second. I thought that, that was middle C, that this one was middle C. How is this middle C and this middle C? Well, they're both the same note. Right? So actually both clefs intersect at middle C. If I take middle C in the treble clef and I start going down here, I'm actually going to start going into the bass clef territory. Likewise, if I start from the bass clef right here and I go above that, I'm going to start working my way into treble clef. So that's why I said within the range of the staff for the treble clef, you're talking about from middle C up here, and for bass clef, you're talking about middle C down there. You can have bass clef notes happen up here and vice versa, but just know that they basically meet here at middle C. These are both the exact same note right here. And now if we do the thing that I was talking about before, so let's do this. Let me move this note down one. Well, move one down on the staff, right? So it must move one down on the keyboard. So that must be B right there. The top line of the bass clef is right here because we moved one down from there. So the top line is actually 2 away from middle C. And then as you go down, you go all the way down to there. And then say from G, I move up 1. Oops, just 1. It's going to move 1 up on the keyboard. Say I want to move up 1 here, I move 1 up here. What if I move up 2? I'm going to move up 2 on the keyboard. What if I move up 5? I'm going to move up 5 on the keyboard. So like I said, the movement on the staff correlates to the movement on the keyboard. Oh, glad I could help you out, Brian. I'm really glad that you enjoyed that part about ledger lines. So maybe I'll go into a little bit more detail about that. I might do that today. I wasn't planning on that, though. Let me see. But we can do that. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about ledger lines. Now, it's up to you to memorize where all the ledger lines are. And you can come up with sayings about the ledger lines to help you memorize them. But after a while, you'll just kind of get a feeling for where they are. So here's the thing. Here's the top line of the treble clef, which I said was right here, right at the top of the staff. Well, let's see here. What if I move up 1 from there? Well, I'm going to move 1 up on the keyboard as well. What if I move up another one to the first ledger line here? Well, that's moving from G to A, and if you notice, the pitches do match, so you can always check yourself there. And let's take a look. Let me move that down a bit so we can see it a little better. Sorry about that. So if you can't see it, our note here is on the first ledger line above the staff, and that is going to be A up here. So as you move up to each ledger line, you know, you move. So I moved up 2 on the staff, I move up 2 on the keyboard. So you can actually literally count, like if you had that note and you're saying like, I have no idea what that is, but I do know the top line of the treble clef right here. You can count how far away they are and figure them out on the keyboard like that. So here they are 1, another note would be 2, 3, 4. So they are 5 away. You see how one's on a line, they skip a line, and then there's another line? That means that those are 5 notes away. So if I take this note and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, hey, that top ledger line there, which is 2 ledger lines up above the staff, is C. So you can actually, if you are struggling with ledger lines, find a note that you do know, which would be around the top or the bottom of the staff, and then count your way up or down from there. We're going to do the same thing going below the bass clef. So now going over the bass clef, here's the bottom line, right? That note is G. Now what happens if I go down to there? Well, I've moved down 2 on the staff, right? So I can move 2 down. You know, start on G and then you move down 2. And hey, that note is E right there. You move down 2 more, and you finally have C there. And then, of course, you can have the spaces in between the ledger lines. That I do want to mention. So say you just had this note right here. And you're like, oh man, I have no idea what that note is. I've never seen it before. So the key to getting the ledger lines is find a note you do know, remember. So that would be the bottom line G right here. And see how it goes line, and then no line, and then line there? That means those are 5 away. Whenever you see that, that means they're 5 away. So you take G, and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like that. And you have C and G there. So C is your bottom note on that one. Okay, so to practice these, you want to go to musictheory.net/exercises/note. But if you go to musictheory.net and there's like a little tab for exercises, you click on note reading or whatever it says, this will take you to this page. And what you want to do first, you might not be able to see it on my screen. There's like a little icon that says customize this exercise. And what you want to do, it'll bring up a bar on the side. Again, my picture is kind of obscuring this from you. But you want to pick a range that's doable for you. You want to pick, you know, between the bottom and top notes of the staff. Again, sorry that you can't see this here. But anyway, once you set your parameters or your settings, you go here and it asks you what the note is. So here we have the bass clef and we're on the bottom line. Think about it for a second. Leave in the comments if you know it. What note is this? It's going to be G. That's the bottom line of the bass clef. You hit G, And it hits G, and it says correct up there, so we're good. Here's the next one, bass clef again. We're up on the 4th line. So what note would that be? Well, remember the saying is good. Boys deserve. They deserve what? They deserve fries, right? So F for fries. Hit F. Got him. Perfect. Oh, man, there's a ledger line. They threw a ledger line in here because I actually didn't set the staff thing in the settings correct, but it's on a ledger line. How do we figure this out? Remember the tip. First thing you want to do is find a note you do know, which is probably the bottom line of the bass clef, right? And we said earlier that that was, which one? It's going to be G. So here's G. And remember that if it goes from line and then there's a line there's no note and then another line, that's 5 away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that note must be C. So let's check to see if we're correct. Got him. Another one. All right, let's do one more. We're going to do bass clef. 3rd line up from the bottom. That's good. Well, actually, I guess I said great, big, and then I said dogs fight animals. So that is the 3rd letter in there. That's dogs. D for dogs. Let's hit them. See what happens. Got him again. All right, so 2nd space up from the bottom. Bass clef. It's going to be C, because remember the saying is all cows eat grass. Let's do one more. Oh, but on another ledger line again, way up above the staff. How do we figure it out? What do I do? Step 1, find a note you do know. That's the top line of the bass clef, which is A. And this is 5 away from A, right? It's the same kind of thing where you have the top line of the bass clef, and then you have no note. You see how there's that top, or there's that one ledger line above the staff. That's where middle C is. And there's another one, so that's 5 away. You go start at A, and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that note, I'm willing to bet, is an E. How about that? So that's how you should go about practicing these. I would practice these if you're starting out note reading. I would practice your note reading for maybe 10 minutes a day for a few months, honestly, for a few months to kind of really get a grasp on the note reading. It's something you should definitely practice every single day.